understand we have problems, but I want to be an agent of change, because I know that there is so much potential within this country where we can be.
Hey, welcome to the Empire Show. This episode is going to be a little different, and you'll understand why in just a moment. I don't normally go on a bit of a diatribe before interviewing our guests, but today I am going to do that because y'all know the Empire Show is about building an empire, financial wealth, generational wealth, and taking that money and creating meaning out of it. Money and meaning is what we're all about. And a few weeks ago, when I started talking about the COVID virus and how small businesses are suffering, and how when you look at the states that are open for business, they're the ones that are leaning more Republican or conservative, and the more Democratic states are still shut. And my theory was that because it's an election year, and obviously the Democrats don't want the Republican to go to get reelected, that maybe there's a little bit of finagling going on. And I also told you that I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I'm a free market capitalist. That's it. I solve problems in exchange for money, and I take that money and I produce meaning out of it for myself, my family, and the three charities that I give to: Shriners, Toys for Tots, and Compassion International. And but a few people got on my ass about, hey, you should leave politics alone, Bedros, and you should stick to teaching us to make more money. Well, let me tell you something. It's the politics that give us the environment to make money. My father was a member of the Communist Party. You guys know this, that I escaped Communist Soviet Union when I was 6 years old. And my dad did not have the opportunity to make money. In fact, when he would steal material and make suits in the home so that he could have bribe money to get us to escape the Soviet Union, the KGB came through because they suspected that he was working under the table and, of course, producing money above and beyond what the government was giving him. So understand that the political powers that be determine how we make our money, how much we can make our money, and of course, how much of that goes to taxes. So I'm going to shift gears one more time here, and we're going to talk about what's happening with George Floyd, racism, bigotry, good cops, bad cops, and how it affects your money. And I'm going to tell you this real quick. I don't want you to think that Empire is all about making multi-millions. I've got a good friend. He's Laotian. We've known each other for 25 years. Chanta Iamsissinith is his name. And this dude is a computer tech at a local fashion design high school or college. And we surf once a week together. He surfs 4 times a week. 90% of the time, I'm highly jealous of his lifestyle. But I also realize my purpose is to create wealth and to do a lot of good with it. But Chanta, make no mistake about it, while he lives in a small condo and has a job and he doesn't have a lot of fancy possessions, the man has an empire. He's got 2 amazing kids. He sleeps well at night. He's got peace of mind. And everywhere we go, it doesn't matter where we're surfing along the Southern California coast, he'll find the kid who's not doing well surfing, and he'll start coaching him up on surfing just out of the blue. And I share this with you because an empire can simply mean just having some level of small financial freedom or having enough money to be able to help your church. And so make no mistake about it, man. What happens in our streets right now when we see small businesses catching fire all over the United States, and now it's carried over to Toronto, Berlin, and London as of yesterday, this is another pandemic. Make no mistake about it. Racism is real. It exists. I see what's happening out there, and there's a whole other side to this looting and rioting that we're going to talk about. And the person that we're going to talk to about this happens to be African American. What do you know? He's black. And so I would like to invite and welcome my friend Remi Adeleke.
Yes, sir.
Remi.
Hey, what's up? Thank
Welcome.
you for having me, Bedros.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
And you are the first interview that we've had in person, in studio, since the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And you've got this awesome book that you've written, Transformed.
Thank you.
A Navy SEAL's unlikely journey from the throne of Africa to the streets of the Bronx,
Yes, sir.
to defy all odds.
Yes, sir.
Let me understand this. Were you supposed to be a Nigerian prince?
Well, technically, I am.
You are, right?
Yeah,
Now, we've all gotten those emails from the night.
Oh, I'm not that one.
Okay, you're not that guy. Okay. All right. So, but man, you've got an amazing story, literally riches to rags to riches. And as I learned about you, and I think we have mutual friends, Ray Care, and a few other SEALs. As I learned about you, I'm like, holy smokes, man! Like you and I lived parallel lives, where my dad was part of the 18% of society who was part of the Communist Party. So I would have caviar, butter, and bread for breakfast with hot tea in Armenia, right in the Soviet Union. And when we escaped and we came here, we lived in Section 8 housing, and food stamps, and we were going through dumpsters behind grocery stores to find food, and I would cry at the age of 6 asking my mom, where's my morning caviar? And so as I was learning about you and reading your book, I'm like, holy smoke, man, this guy went from riches to rags to riches again. And so I thought you would be, and you were very vocal about what's happening
I am.
right now with this whole situation of, I don't know, racism, bigotry, white privilege. So let's start there. What's been going through your mind and emotions over the last week about the George Floyd murder?
I mean, first and foremost, what happened to him was horrific. But at the same time, I was even more upset because it's been happening, right? There hasn't been change. We've talked about change with, with Trayvon Martin. We talk about change with Eric Garner. We talk about
Rodney King in the 90s.
Rodney King, and I'm mispronouncing Adeleke. I can't pronounce his last name, but the Haitian in New York City when I was coming up, right? We've always been talking about change for so many years, and no change has come. So when this happened to George Floyd, and then it happened the way it happened, it was maddening. It was maddening. And for me, as an African American and having the platform that I have as a SEAL, I was just like, I know I have been speaking out about this, but I'm going to do it even more vociferously.
Sure.
Because a change absolutely has to come, because as we were talking about off air, if a change doesn't come, what are we going to have left? Right.
So let me ask you this. What does that change look like?
Oh, well, one, policing. I mean, for me, and again, a lot of the answers I'm going to throw out is my opinion on it.
Sure.
Right? So my first answer is screening. Police officers absolutely have to be screened in a different way. Like, in order for me to go through SEAL training, I have to go through an extensive screening process, right? And just to get into the program. And if I don't get through that screening process, I'm not going to get into the program. And then I have to go through 6 months of screening in order to even qualify to get the rating of a SEAL. And then I got to go through another 4 months of screening in order to go on a SEAL team. Now, obviously, because of money and time and resources, a police officer can't go through all of that screening, but there has to be a change in the screening and more of a background check is into who are these guys? Who were these guys? What are their associations? Because that plays into it. The mindset that, because we could train, but I heard somebody say earlier today, the police, a lot of police officers, when they find themselves in a situation with a white person, their training works, right? Like that white person, for the most part, is not getting shot or killed unless they pose an absolute threat. But how come when it's a black person, it's a different situation, right? Like, how come their training doesn't kick in how come this guy couldn't get his knee off of George Floyd's neck, right?
Do you think he was in a fight or flight state?
Man.
Again, I'm asking you to make an assumption here. You weren't obviously in the cop's head.
I think it was pride, personally. I think when you look at the video and you hear the voices of people saying, listen, he can't breathe. He's dying. You killing him. And then that cop has his hands in his pocket and he's staring like, what are you going to do? I think a big part of it was pride. I'm not gonna let you dictate to me what to do because I'm right, because I got this badge, I got this power, so I'm gonna stay right here no matter what you say. And what are you gonna do? I keep getting this message from so many people, and the majority of them are my Caucasian friends, and they're saying, why didn't those black kids why didn't they put down the camera and go do something? Think about that question. Right? You have a cop who is killing somebody. He has a gun on his side. You got 3 other cops that are participating, maybe directly or indirectly. Well, two others we know directly. A third indirectly because he's just standing there watching, and they have guns, and these are they're African Americans on the other end of that camera. What do you think would have happened if one of those young African American kids or men went to go charge one of the police officers? The body count would have went up, right? At least that's how I see it happening. So,
would you have charged?
I would have. Personally, I
told my wife, I said, while everyone's blaming the 2 other cops who were on his back, on George's back, and the one cop standing there. And again, I didn't know that it was all African Americans behind the camera, but there had to be some white folk as well, some Hispanics, whatever. I imagine there was more people around. And I told my wife how easy it would have been to just follow my moral code, tackle the cop just enough, not punch him, not fight him, tackle him to get him off, and then lay on the ground and let them handcuff me. But now he's off his neck. Yeah. And I honestly, again, hey, I'm not black, so what do I know? But I honestly don't think that if anyone had tackled, so I believe everyone watching was just as responsible as the cops, in my opinion. But again, I also walk around in a very different color skin. And for me, I've been in situations,
where, case in point, about a year, 2 years ago, I went to a Best Buy, right? I get out of my car, and right next to me is a white woman, and she's in her car, and we get out around the same time, and I guess she was leaving her kids and her teenage daughter in the car, right? And so she gets out, and then she starts walking, and then she sees me, right? She recognizes, okay, this is a black person. I don't know what's going on through her mind, but she sees me, and then she looks at me, and then she goes back to her daughter, and she says, make sure you lock the door. Right? Now, can someone argue, well, maybe she was just being safe and she forgot to tell her daughter to lock the door? Sure. Possibly. But when that has happened to an African American so many times, when you go into a department store and the security guard is watching. I mean, you read my book, so you know what happened at the McDonald's. When you go into certain places and everybody's being suspicious. There's another story that I couldn't share in my book, but me and my friend, we went to Sayal's, a restaurant in San Diego in Mission Valley. And right after we ordered, the waitress said to my we were in SEAL training at the time. We're training to be Navy SEALs, right? We're not hoodlums. Like, we're regular clothes. And this girl says to us, here, she gives us she doesn't say anything. She says, here's a check. Me and my buddy look at each other like, the check? We just ordered our food. She's talking about the check. And then she said, well, there's been a string of people walking out and not paying the bill, and the manager put it on the waitresses. If you feel like somebody may walk out, you need to give them the check.
Oh, that's straight up profiling.
Right?
Gotcha.
Now, so when you have instances like this, and so many instances, and then you get in a situation with this, this white woman who, I've served this country. You know what I mean? Like, I've done a lot. And for this woman to look at me like I'm going to, and it wasn't just it was the look that she gave me that I've seen so many times before.
Yeah, I get it.
That, and so bringing that back to, the skin that we live in, I understand as a black person, if I was on the other end of the camera and I went to go charge, which I would have done, I would have probably ended up shot. I would have probably ended up on the ground. I would have for sure ended up on the ground. And in the case that I was able to save George Floyd's life, I would definitely have probably been arrested and charged with, whatever I would have been charged with, right? Because he survived. So it was like, why did you do that? The cops had it under control.
Right. He survived. Yeah. So I see what you mean. There was no winning that scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no winning that scenario. Again, so I'm going to go back to your first point where you said, when I said, hey, why do you think the cop didn't get off? You said it was pride. And you're 100% right, in my opinion, again. But I'll tell you where this comes from. Obviously, Fit Body Bootcamp, we're a franchise, and like any big organization, franchisors, we band together under the IFA umbrella, International Franchise Association, and we have a lobbyist. He's an attorney, and he goes to the Capitol Hill, and they lobby on behalf of franchises, just like gun, the gun companies have lobbyists, and cigarette companies, and alcohol, etc. And so I was being interviewed by the International Franchise Association 4 weeks ago, and also the lobbyist for our organization, the IFA. And, because all these franchises are shut. They're closed. whether it's fitness or restaurant or yogurt franchises, doesn't matter, they're shut. And so the interviewer asked him, he said, hey, so now that we see stats coming out that this COVID thing really wasn't that big a deal, it wasn't as contagious, the death rate has been modified because of, someone could die with COVID, not necessarily because of COVID. Yep. When you're up there on Capitol Hill, why do you think the policymakers are not moving quick enough? Mm-hmm. He goes, we have to walk so gently around the policymakers to allow them to save face, because their pride won't allow them to pivot.
Yeah.
And as I saw that cop on that man's neck, and you could see the look, like he knows he's supposed to get off. He knows, you could tell.
Yeah.
You know when someone knows they're doing something wrong.
Exactly.
But he wouldn't, because he wanted to save face.
Yeah.
Despite the death that took place. Yeah. So that's something worth bringing up.
Yeah, pride, and it's so funny because I was formulating as I was working out today, because as you know, being athletic, working out, it does something to your brain. It's good for your brain.
You know what that is, by the way? My wife's really smart. She figured it. Well, she studies a lot. Yeah. Because I'm a knuckle dragger. So when we're working out, swimming, running, biking, anything with sets and reps, rhythmic, it's called bilateral stimulation. And in the psychology world, it's called EMDR, where they give you two little electrodes, nothing that zaps you, but it just goes tick, 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 tick. Forces both sides of your brain to work, the left and right side, to solve problems together. Yeah. And so it's called bilateral stimulation, because I used to tell my wife, I'm like, I don't need therapy, because I've had a lot of fucked up childhood. Like, I don't need therapy, I just go work out and I solve all my problems. And so she did the study, and she goes, you actually do. It's called bilateral stimulation, EMDR. But go on, so as you were doing that, you truly were probably coming up with brilliance. Yeah, I was thinking about what I was going to say tomorrow in a post, and it's something I don't want to give it all away just yet, but because I might not be able to formulate it properly by tomorrow. But I say all that to say, this pride, it has seeped in so much into politics, and that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about either tomorrow or the day after. Is because I'm like you. I would consider myself an independent. Similar space as you. I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. And one of the reasons why years ago I chose to not be either one is because I started to see how, even especially at the political level, there are people on both sides who are more loyal to their side and to their idea of what's right or wrong than to the people that they're serving.
To we the people, everybody, right?
Sir.
And it's so dangerous, and that is seeped down to the ground floor, where people are just so. We live in a very individualistic culture and society. We've been that way for a long period of time, where it's all about me, and mine, me, and my tribe. And so I say all that to say, when people have become so rooted to, oh, I'm a Democrat, or so rooted to, I'm a Republican, when that Republican does something wrong, your pride and you're so rooted in that Republican that you can't say what that person did was wrong.
Bingo. So let's actually take that down and bring it right to that street in Minnesota.
Yeah.
The two cops on George's back and the one watching, if we could tap into their brain, come on, they're going, what he's doing is wrong right now.
But me and my tribe.
But this is our tribe. And I'm going to bite my tongue. And the man dies.
Exactly.
And it trickles down from the top all the way
down to the bottom.
And this is why I wanted to talk to you, because you've been very vocal on your social media. You and my friend Ryan Tillman, who I tagged in that post yesterday, he's an African-American cop right here in Chino, and he also has this awesome side business called Breaking Barriers, and he'll go and speak at different high schools and stuff, and he brings communities and cops together. Right? And I texted him yesterday, and I was like, hey man, first off, thank you for coming to my defense when that cat was calling me out. And I said, secondly, your business is going to be doing really good, unfortunately, with what's happening. He says, yeah, it sure is. And I've been mentoring him for 6 months now. Good dude. But the perspective that you have is so different. Let me ask you something. When that lady turns back, looks at you, turns back, goes to her daughter and says, make sure you lock the car, or you walk into Best Buy and the security guard is giving you a little extra attention, or the lady at the restaurant does her profiling and goes, here's a check before your food comes out. Right? You're like, but what if I
And the
want a
crazy thing
dessert?
about that story is there was a table of a couple right next to us, a white couple right next to us, and they got their check after they finished eating.
Oof.
So, because me and my boy looked at the table and we were just like, they just finished eating and they got their check.
Was your friend black too?
He was black, yeah.
Okay.
We both in Bud. We both in still trans time, and
But to her, you guys fit a profile.
we fit the profile. And my boy is funny, so he used some choice words when he was, in his response. But we ain't gonna steal. We got money. We ain't come in and steal your food.
So let me ask you, man, because I don't really hear too many people talking about. They're talking about the right and the wrong and what police need to do. That.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Because I know how I felt when I came to America, and literally like the third week we were there, my dad's getting yelled at, go back to your own fucking country, you foreigner, you're taking all American jobs. And I'm 6 years old looking like, this guy's gonna punch my dad. What the hell's going on? Why is he like yelling at him like this, right? And who wants a paper route at 2 a.m? He had a paper route. He was, like we were talking about, I think we were talking about offline about the Jamaicans that have all the, what's that?
In Living Color.
In Living Color, right? That the show where the Jamaicans had like 10 different jobs. My dad was like a modern day Jamaican. Like he was washing dishes at a pizzeria, delivering newspapers, and then pumping gas. Like what exactly were any of those 3 jobs that he was taking away from Americans? But so I know how I felt. Like I didn't belong. That I actually started lying and I started telling people that we're French and not Armenian and not communist because I figured French has a little more sex appeal to it. I don't know, like, but as a kid, you try and figure out, like, because you go Armenia, they go, we don't even know. They go, you're just a foreigner. But it's like, well, French, like, that's I don't know, it sounds royal to me. But anyway, I know how I felt. How did you feel? How do you feel as a black man in a restaurant or in the Best Buy? I want people to understand this. I want to understand this.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I hate the victim mentality.
Yeah.
So
no, but I mean, it could be rage. Like, do you feel anger? Do you feel like, hey, listen, lady, I'm a fucking SEAL. I've gone and fought for you, or like, what are you feeling?
There is a moment of anger, but then for me, there's a moment of understanding. I understand that this is the country I've been in, most of my life. I understand that this country has been this way for going back to slavery, right? So there's a point of inspiration. Or I say motivation. I was having this conversation the other day about suffering in a talk, and I was talking about how, the good thing about suffering is there are so many lessons that come out of suffering that you will not be able to get in any other by sitting in the classroom, right? And so for me, the lesson that comes out of a situation like that is I need to be more vocal. I need to, not to that person, but I need to figure out a way to penetrate into this side of America so that I can use my platform to initiate change. I'm the type of person, I like to be a problem solver. I see a problem, which to me, that's a problem. Okay, I don't like it, but I ask myself, what are you gonna do about it, right? And that was one of the reasons why I wrote my book, because I know that, me being a SEAL, I know that there's a whole lot of people in middle America, white America, black America, every spectrum of America that's like, ooh, Navy SEAL, cool. I want to read this story. And as you know from reading the book, the majority of the book doesn't focus on the teens.
No, I think it was like chapter 23 and 24 or something like that.
Exactly. So I did that because I wrote this book with the topics that are in the book as a solution to me walking into a store and somebody looking at me, right? And saying, man, this dude's gonna, because I wanted that person to one day, oh, see this book on the book, oh, Navy SEAL, oh, I'm gonna read this book. Get through it and get a different perspective.
I get you.
Does that make sense?
It does.
That all black people aren't gonna rob you. That all black people aren't hoodlums. You know what I mean? Like, for me, the answer is, how I feel is I need to come up with a solution to this problem, right? But there is a moment of anger, but then at the
You do realize, like, that's us problem solvers. Like, every entrepreneur is a problem solver. All an entrepreneur is they identify, hey, is this person, like, dude who created Uber, he's like, cabs smell, they take a long time to come. Mrs. Jones is driving around town, she'll just get an app, and, like, that's a problem. He solves a problem. Like, but that's, like, half of 1%.
Yeah.
So we can't condition society to become problem solvers.
That's true.
again, like what we can do is they can learn problem solving through books,
Exactly.
right? Through books, through examples. But here's the crazy thing. Would you normally think that Asians are dangerous? Like, would you think that Asians are dangerous?
Me personally, no.
Yeah, no.
No.
Right? Could you believe that for a long time I would get PTSD when I would see a group of Asian dudes? And I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
When I was 19 years old, I used to carjack. I did stupid shit. I used to carjack people. So I saw this Honda Civic, and certain Hondas in certain years, the parts are worth a lot of money back in the early 90s. And so I went to carjack this Asian kid. Little did I know that he was in an Asian gang. And the carjacking went wrong. He got away. I went to visit my friend at a place called Golf and Stuff, like a mini golf place, right? To tell him, like, man, like I lost probably a few $100 on parts, just and then played some video games. Like it was a very different life back then than I have today. Yeah, and I'm stacking up karma points right now in hopes that I make it to heaven one day.
There you go.
But anyway, so all that said, so that dude obviously realizes that I'm at the Golf and Stuff because he follows me. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
He comes in with 13 other dudes, and they beat the dog shit out of me and put me in the hospital. Karmic justice at the highest level. I had it coming. Years after, like up to like 2, 3, 4 years after that, like I would see a group of Asian dudes, like they could be like science kids, and I would start freaking out. Like my body would just go into, right, self-defense. And interestingly enough, when we moved to the United States, my first friend, he's African American. His name is Dwayne. And he taught me English, and we played Atari, and we played a game called Snake in the Grass, and he introduced me to all the neighborhood kids. And so, like, Dwayne was my door into the American youth experience, right? And then, of course, a few times where we lived in Section 8 housing, there was a fair amount of African Americans in Santa Ana in the 80s, 82, 83, 84. And one day my brother got in a fight with the tow truck driver, and everyone stood around to watch, and this African-American lady came out of, and my brother got floored. Like the dude hit him with tire iron, and he just hit the floor. And I was a kid watching. My brother's 14 years older than me. So this African-American lady comes out with the pillow, puts it under my brother's head. And so, interestingly enough, I grew up with a very different perspective. Right? My first friend is African-American. This lady helped my brother out. And yet, as all this has happened, I was just doing some introspective look. I'm like, holy shit, man, I was tripping out when I would see groups of Asian dudes because of what happened to me. And so when you really think about going back to what you said with cops, and there has to be more background checks, more, what was the words you used? Screening, thank you. Because if you had, especially as in those formidable ages, man, when you're a kid, if you had a bad experience with a black dude, a Mexican dude, I tell people I'm Armenian, and they go, "Oh shit, you're part of High Power, the Armenian gang in Glendale." I'm like, no. I'm not that. My dad kept us away from Hollywood and Glendale so that we can assimilate. But
smart.
Right. Which is crazy because people immediately would see me as a threat when they hear Armenian. I was like, no, not like that. So it's crazy the experience that you have as a kid at formidable years. You grow up and you will show prejudice, maybe not even knowing. And I don't know if there's a solution to that, but that's just an example that came to me.
I think going back to my story, I hated cops as a kid.
Why?
Because of the things that I saw. I would be riding the train or go ride the train, and you would see 4 cops beating up somebody because they jumped a turnstile. I would see, cops going to local bodegas and stores and collect money, from the owner. I saw a lot of things, and then that had stuff happen to me as a young kid, and then, getting thrown in jail for something stupid or, getting racially profiled by the police officers. But the NYPD in the 80s and the 90s, they still have a lot of things they need to work through to get better, but it was bad in the 80s and the 90s, really, really bad. And because I kept on witnessing this as I walked down the streets of the Bronx, as I went to the train station, I was just like, all cops are bad. All cops are racist. I can't stand them. I will never talk to a police officer. I will never comply with a police officer. And what changed my perspective was after I joined the military, right? Because And one of the reasons why I didn't want to join the military was because I associated anybody in a uniform as a police officer, right? And so,
See, but that's again your experience in the formative years carry over.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And so what helped begin to change my perspective and say, okay, all police officers aren't bad. All police officers aren't racist is when I got into the military and I began to get around people of all cultures and all backgrounds. And I began to talk to kids from Minnesota, Hispanic kids from California, and hear their experiences. And they would say their father was a police officer and they don't stand for any of that kind. And that's when I began to realize all police officers aren't bad, which that's the reality.
Yeah.
There are bad apples in every bunch, right? Well, in New York at the time, there were a little maybe more bad apples than normal. So
yeah, which by the way, here's another human behavior to address that you brought up so perfectly. I mean, would it be fair to say that when you were young and you saw cops going into the bodegas and collecting money, you know, getting paid off and beating up a dude, 4 cops beating up a dude who jumped a turnstile, would you say at least less than 50% were bad cops? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say, oh yeah, for sure.
Right?
50%.
Sure.
Yeah, probably 25.
Right.
I would guess.
Right, which is still a high number compared to today.
Yeah.
Which is still a high number. Yet your mentality was all cops are bad.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And here's something else. I'm trying to get down to the human behavior of what's happening here. That we've got a software called Fit Pro Newsletter. It doesn't matter, just it's a software. And there's about 1,600 members in it, users of it. And our software support dude one day comes running into my office. He's like, man, Fit Pro Newsletter's freaking out. It's got massive problems. Everyone's complaining.
Yeah.
I go, how many complaints did you get, man? He goes, 5. 5 out of 1,600.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But what happens is when you get, and there was a glitch in the software, but 5 out of 1,600, customers. It wasn't all, but when you get more than you're used to, it seems like all.
Yeah.
When coaching clients of mine tell me, man, I tried every marketing system and nothing works. Like, what did you try? Well, I tried Facebook ads and Instagram ads. Listen, there's YouTube, there's Google, there's fucking billboards, there's direct mail, there's call centers. You can't say all. And we're the human mind is so easy to go to all.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know the solution. I just want to bring that to the surface and go, all right, so when we're watching the news and we see that a dude got arrested and he's black, then we go, oh, shoot, maybe they're all bad. He's Hispanic. Shoot, maybe they're all bad.
Yeah.
Or here in, well, when I say here, Lake Elsinore, they're making, I don't know, what's it, meth, that shit that blows up if things go wrong. And it's typically, every time that happens, it's a white dude on the screen. So whenever I see a scraggly white dude, should I think that you're a crackhead?
Yeah.
And yet my mind does go to that, like, oh shoot, maybe they're all making meth somewhere, right? I'm like, whoa, dude, easy. Like and it's a human behavior just trying to put people in a box.
Yeah, you know, 100%. You know, it's like we gravitate towards the negative.
Yeah.
You know, I have a saying, you know, it's so much easier to find a curse and a gift than it is to find a gift and a curse within a curse, right? It's because, you know, it's just so easy to have a gift and just be like, well, that part of the gift is so bad and then the whole thing is bad than it is to be in the middle of a bad situation and have this glimmer of hope and see it. You can't, so often you can't see it. And that's just the way, you know, life is. And media definitely doesn't help, you know.
Right, yeah.
You know.
And let's not forget the media's job is to sell ad space.
Oh yeah, make money.
To make money.
It's, well, for me, like my opinion on that, I was going to touch on this too, is twofold for me. It's one, money, and it's two, political interest.
Agenda,
right? Agenda, because whoever is able to spin the news in their favor the most and get the most amount of people to be attracted to that spin, then that equates to certain people getting voted into office. That equates to, and then that equates to power, right? Because political interest, when you have somebody in a position of political power that's going to advocate for your political interests, then that means more power for you and your group, right? And your tribe.
By virtue of getting that person elected.
Exactly.
Yep. And I don't know about you guys watching and listening to this, but it ain't often that you hear people get excited and get glued to the TV about the fireman who saves the kitten from the tree.
Yeah.
Right? It's usually about the dude that lost a leg in a car accident or a house that caught fire. And that's just, we're primarily wired for self-preservation. And so we want to see the fear so that we can go, how do I protect myself from it?
Yeah.
And that's how they keep us hooked, because there's got to be a lot more good happening in the world than just all bad.
Yeah. But bad news makes money. Good news don't make anybody any money.
So Remi, let's shift gears for a moment, and 34 minutes of talking about this. And again, if I'm not looking to come up with hey, here's the answer how we're going to stop racism, but I really love the fact that you took a hard stand on this, and I wanted to make sure that we gave you a voice. And also, let's talk about your book and your crazy ass life. Your crazy ass life. Your dad was a chief?
Yeah, he's a chief in the Yoruba tribe. Yes.
Tell me how that works. So Nigerian.
Yep.
You and your brother were born there.
Yep. Well, my brother was born in the States. I was born in Nigeria.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Your brother was born in the States. You were born in Nigeria. Your mom is a New Yorker.
New Yorker.
I
tell people all the time, my mother and my dad's story is a real coming to America story.
It is.
They stole it. But my mother and my dad, they were at the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History at the same time. There was a art expo on Yoruba art.
Yeah.
And my dad happened to be in New York for a business meeting, and so he found out that the Met had this show on. So he went. My mom has always been into African art, so she went. They met, and then they got married 5 months later. and then my dad. It's funny because my dad, he had growing up in Nigeria, but being educated in his later years in London, he had this smooth British accent as well.
Oh, I bet he swept it right off.
Wow, my mom and it's funny because my mom was like, he was telling me he was a prince and this and that, and my mother was like, you ain't no prince, you ain't nothing, until she got back to Africa, and she was exposed to this rich, lavish life.
Wow.
So.
Wow. So your dad's got this amazing life, does really well for himself, and he took massive pride in the home country.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Nigeria.
Yes. His priority, he would tell my mother all the time, my priority is my country. He hated the kind of, I get a lot of who I am from him, obviously, and he was a problem solver. When he saw a problem, he wanted to come up with a solution for it. And one of the problems he saw, not just in the UK, but all over the world, was this false impression of Africans, that African people were a bunch of uneducated bush people who, don't know how to speak, and, they eat on their knees or whatever, right? And so because he hated that narrative, he went back to Nigeria to establish his businesses. But his primary goal was to essentially build this business sector, this business within Nigeria, this big area called the Lagoon Development Project, where people from all across the world could come to and do business and exchange ideas and do all the things that my dad had planned to.
Is this where he asked for the piece of the water, and they were like, why do you want a piece of the water? He's like, just give me the piece of the water. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, so in the 1970s, my dad, he bought this massive plot of land called Marico. And it was a landfill. It was trash. It was garbage. And he bought it because he wanted to take that to develop this city on, this business sector on. But unfortunately, towards halfway through about 1975, the Nigerian government stripped it from him. They took that from him and said, you can't have it. I don't know all the history behind it, but in short, they took it from him. And my dad went to court for 10 years and fought the Nigerian government for the land back. And finally, they got tired of my dad, and they said, okay, we'll give you the money back. My dad said, I don't want the money back. He paid £8 million for it, right? So they asked him, they said, well, what do you want? And my dad said, I want the lagoon. And the lagoon was just a body of water, and they all laughed at him. They said, "The lagoon? Why do you why do you want the lagoon?" He said, "Don't worry about it. Just give me the lagoon." And my dad, being an engineer, he hired Dutch engineers to come and dredge the foreshore to develop, because he wanted to develop that island. He wanted to develop that part of water into land. Because my dad's mindset was, if I create something that was never there, no one could ever come back and say what they said with Marico, that this was ours. So that's why he took the water, dredged it, and created the island, which exists to this day, in order to be able to say this is ours forever.
Talk about a problem solver.
Yeah, yeah.
And by the way, that's what they did in the United Arab Emirates, right?
Yep.
Also,
UAE, Palm Islands. I even think part of Heathrow Airport, from what I understand, has been dredged. A lot of that has been dredged to create the parts of the airport. So yeah.
So now we're really diving into what the empire show is about. Like, there's a man who, he was born in Nigeria.
Yep, born
right?
in Nigeria. He was the firstborn son to my grandfather.
There you go. And it is a corrupt government.
Very, very corrupt.
Very similar to the Armenian government, which was another thing we talked. When I read about the part in your book where some politicians who would blow the taxpayers' money, and then in court they would say a snake, a lizard, a squirrel, whatever came in, a fish, a snake, a fish, and something else, to stole it, and that was the answer, and it went into the book. Says that's what happened. That's bananas.
It's how do you, even to this day, a person will run for office, get elected, and they will come out a billionaire. Or somebody will go in and become a general, rise through the ranks, become a general, get put over some specific, some position of influence in the military, and come out a billionaire. Like, how does that happen?
Where's that money coming from?
Where's that money coming from? You know, the Minister of Oil, she's been investigated because I think it was something like $20 billion or something like that disappeared.
Billion with a B.
B with a bill over the course of billion with a B over the course of her tenure as the Minister of Oil. And these are all cases you can look up. And people always, every time I talk about corruption in Nigeria, people say, well, there's corruption in America. And yeah, there is corruption in America. However, the corruption in Nigeria is at a level that far surpasses.
Yeah, it's in your face.
And it's ostensible. As soon as you get off the plane, like I was in Nigeria, as soon as I got off the plane, custom officers were just like, well, do you have a gift for me? If you do not have a gift, you might have to go back. What do you mean a gift?
Wow.
A gift, gift. They mean money.
Yeah.
So you get bribed as soon as you enter into the country.
Question.
Yeah.
Obviously, they know that you know the culture, the tradition. If I went there with my white American wife as a tourist, would they be hitting me up for gifts?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
And if I play dumb and like, I don't know what you're talking about.
At some point, they do back off, but yes, you will.
Would you get pressured more because you're supposed to know what's up?
Well, because I'm Nigerian and then I have an American accent, even more so.
Gotcha.
Right? So now it's like, because when they see a black American, they're just like, oh, if you're black, you're from America,
you're loaded.
Right? You have
They
money
just see you loaded,
to be able to come in to come here. So I mean, on the drive back to the airport on my way out, we got stopped at gunpoint, right? Because the driver, we were trying to get to the airport, and the driver, he shifted into another lane illegally. I mean, technically, as it relates to the driving laws, and a police officer stopped him, pulled up his AK-47, and it ordered for him to get out the car. And I was mad. I was hot. Me and my brother in the car. And my brother's like, Remi, listen, man, the ABC stuff ain't gonna work here, man. Keep your mouth shut. And my other brother's like, yeah, the cop's just gonna bribe him. And they negotiated back and forth. And the cop, we ended up giving him ended up equating to like $20 in order to get off. But it's systemic from the policing. I mean, we talk about police problems here. Police problems there. So. Yeah, the corruption was bad, and that's what essentially led to my father's downfall.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, with the way your father died, he was bit by a dog.
Yep.
And that led to him getting on some medication, that there was some complication between
bad medication. They gave him some bad medication.
Yeah. It was supposed to be like an anti-rabies medication,
it was supposed to be
right?
An anti-rabies medication. It was something else. And he ended up taking it, and he ended up dying,
And now at this point...
And at the same time, he was battling the Nigerian government in court,
right,
to regain the island that had now been developed, that the Lagos state government came in and said, this island that you developed doesn't belong to you, because the federal state government that said, okay, what do you want? And when you asked for the foreshore, the federal state government was never allowed to give you that body of water. It belongs to the Lagos state government. That foreshore belongs to the Lagos state government. So that's what they used, but they conveniently waited until an island was developed to say, oh, sir, you are wrong.
Yeah. I love in the book when you do the accent. I'm listening to the audio book and when you just start busting out with the accent.
Yeah. So
this happens, and of course now all of a sudden, and your mom was like used to like having servants drawing a bath and a chauffeur and
horses,
compound,
lavish parties,
and all of a sudden, Dad passes away. And Mom is asking your older half brother.
Yep.
Am I right?
Yep.
John?
Yep.
Like, hey, so what's the deal with the money? Like, how do I live? I've got the kids.
Yep.
And effectively, there was no more money left.
Yeah, my dad had put everything into that island. He already started signing contracts with McDonald's, Marks and Spence. I mean, he signed contracts with restaurants and
Wow.
and other department stores. I mean, he had leveraged all of his money because he knew as soon as I start selling off this office space, and this is up. I mean, that island now is worth billions of dollars.
Oh, I'm sure. Is it fully developed?
It's fully developed. It wasn't. They made it residential.
Okay.
So it's called.
Have you
Banana
been on
Island.
it?
I've been on. Yeah, I went when I was in Nigeria. I went there.
How did you feel when you were on there?
It was sad.
Yeah.
It was sad that my dad had put so much effort into this, and now his kids can't even claim it as their own.
Has your mom gone back to it?
No, she never has. She doesn't even want to go. She has no desire to ever go back to Nigeria.
I would imagine. No.
You know.
Is your mom with us today?
Yeah, she's in New York. She's in New York.
Good. How's her health?
Look her up on Instagram. My mom, she's a fitness.
Oh, okay. All right.
woman.
Good.
So
Good.
She's about to be 70, but she looks like she's like 45. She works out every day.
Oh, good for her. That's fantastic.
Post workout videos every day. You bring on staff.
Yeah. She's hired.
And she eats right. Yeah.
She's hired. That's great. So at that point, do you remember any of that? Like the conversation of like, hey, we're broke?
No, not really. You know, and one of the reasons why I don't, because when we fully transitioned to the States permanently, my mom did a fantastic job of masking the reality of what had happened.
Okay.
You know, because my mother knew. As a matter of fact, I remember when my mother told me that my father died. I'll never forget it. She took me and she put me on her right side and put my brother on her left side, and it's on this red chair.
Sorry, who's older?
My brother's a year older than me,
Got
Matthew.
it.
And she said, you know, your dad's gone and he's not coming back. He has died. And she said it in such a way, such a calming way, that me and my brother were just like, because we're young, I'm 5, my brother's 6, we don't fully understand death or what that means, right? We just said, okay, and we went back to playing, right? And so that's just a snapshot of how my mom carried herself throughout that period, throughout that transition period. I never saw her cry. I mean, during that time, during that season, I never saw her breaking down. She held it together because she knew if I break down, or if I lock myself in my room, who's going to take care of these kids?
Sure.
And if I'm breaking down, then my kids are going to break down, and it's going to create this never-ending cycle. So people ask me all the time, Remi, where do you get this level of perseverance to overcome the things that you have overcome? And I say, you know, I had a living example of it every day of my life, you know, and my mother, going back to what we talked about later, how people are the way they are. A lot of the way I am comes exactly from my mother. And so I didn't really, it wasn't until I was about 8 years old that it really hit me that my dad was gone and we are in poverty.
What happened then? Like, did you process through it? Did you cry? Do you rage out? Do you freak out? Do you ask your mom? What happens?
I cried through it. I was, I'll never forget, I was in my bedroom, and me and my brother, we had this pull-out bed. It was like one bed on top, and then the second bed that I slept on, we would pull out, and that's how we slept. And we had this lamp in the corner. The shade was off of it. I can't remember. My brother broke the shade, so it was just like this skeleton of a lamp. And there was a picture of my dad on top of my dresser. And I just remember just looking around my room in our lack and, you know, having seen at this point, you know, my mother's making me and my brother wash our underwears and socks out with Ivory soap because she couldn't afford laundry detergent. You know, we're going to the rent office with her and seeing her plead for extra time to pay the rent. And so all of these things that I have begun to start seeing and, you know, coalesce, so to speak, with that situation, I just broke down and I was just like, man, if my dad was here, we wouldn't have this life that we have. We would have a better life. And I just remember staring at my father's picture and realizing that. And my mother came into the room and she said, what's wrong? And I said, Mom, I miss my dad. I wish my father was here because if my father was here, we would have a better life. And, you know, she threw her arms around me and said, we're going to make it. We're going to be all right. And I would say for me, that's when I made the decision to find a father. Or you know, find something that would fill that void in order to get me through. And that's when I think I decided, and I could be off, but that's where I feel like I decided that I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be broke. I'm going to be somebody, whether I do it illegally or whether I do it legally. I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to be like my father.
Right around the age of 8.
Right around the age of 8, yeah.
This is bananas.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why, and then we're going to come back to perseverance and problem solving. Dude, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Again, the shit that happens to us in our youth is so powerful.
Yeah.
The trauma, the suffering, all of that. is so powerful because as you're describing this, I'm like, this is a parallel to my life when my sister comes home crying. So I'm the oops baby. I wasn't supposed to be born. My brother's 14 years older. My sister's 16 years older than me. And so they kind of raised me along with my mom and dad. So I had two sets of parents, both beat all of them. Because the Armenian culture, they just slap you around. But that's a whole different story that I can talk to my therapist about, not you. So one day my sister, so we came here in 1980. It's probably... so it's probably 82, 83, because I'm 8 or 9 years old. My sister comes home crying, working at the pizzeria, same pizzeria my dad worked at, and she's crying. My dad says, "What's going on? What happened?" In Armenian. And she says, the owner of the business took a sip out of her paper cup, like about every hour takes a sip. And she's disgusted because then that's like her water. But he wanted to make sure that she wasn't drinking 7-Up. From the dispenser, the vending, right? Because it's a restaurant, because she was a waitress there. And so she's just like, I don't want to work there anymore. And my dad's like, look, we're all paying for this rent. It's Section 8 housing. We still have to all work to be able to make it. And being the youngest one, my brother's working multiple jobs, sister's working multiple jobs. Dad, it's just me and my mom at home. And I'm hearing all this. I'm like, shit. And I remember telling my sister that when I grow up, I'm going to be rich. And she'll never have to work for that guy. Today, she works for me, and Joan will tell you, she works for me from home. She does all my customer support.
Awesome.
And she had to remind me this 4 years ago, because she's been working for me now for 4 years. She goes, do you remember when you were 8? And I was crying, and it was the only thing I could do was like, I'm gonna be so rich that you're gonna work for me and not for anyone else. And it's bananas how an experience like that, that you had, that I had,
shaped us.
Shaped us. It's like a little seed that becomes that tree.
No, 100%, 100%. And I think, again, people ask me, I get this question often, Remi, if you can go back and change any part of your life, what would you change? And my answer is always the same, nothing. Because it was all of those heartaches, those sleepless nights, the rejection, the pain, the mistakes, the selling drugs, all of those things that I did that made me the man that I am today. And I wouldn't be who I am, and I wouldn't have been the person that I was 5, 6, 7 years ago if it wasn't for that kid. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Don't forsake small beginnings. That's something I try to tell people all the time, because it's just so much within it. It's valuable. It's valuable.
Dude, you mentioned perseverance, and you said, I get it from my mom. And then you mentioned problem solving. You said, I get it from my dad. My brain goes to, because I'm always thinking about this. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Like, what made me so driven? And I think it's
a combination. I think it's a combination.
Is it?
I think it's a combination. I think that, and the reason why is because, I own a consulting firm on the side, and I've been doing this for years, where I train pro athletes, collegiate athletes, Olympians, and even corporations at times on not just SEAL principles, but military principles that translates into business. Mental toughness, teamwork, communication, leadership, that sort of thing. And one thing that I found specifically with the athletes, a lot of these athletes that I work with, they're just gifted. They're just naturally gifted. The things that they could do with their body, it's obvious that it's nature, right? That genetically they got exactly what they needed in order to be the studs that they have. But they're missing so much more because they don't have it up here, right? And they never had to work hard to get to that next level, and because they never really had to work hard, everything has come so easy. They will probably never get to that next level, right? And that's the difference between the Michael Jordans of the world, and I'm not going to say another athlete's name because I don't want to seem like I'm putting him in a bad light, but and other athletes, right? Michael Jordan, I truly believe that it was part of it was nature, but then a lot of part of it was nurture. And a lot of part of it was him putting in recognizing, hey, I'm gifted, but I need to stay in the gym extra, spend that extra time in the gym. And so, again, I see this a lot with athletes where they have it from a genetic standpoint, but in order for them to get better, they're missing some components, whether it's a mental toughness component, whether it's the ability to work with other people, whether it's the ability to reason and think through things really, really fast. They're missing that piece, right?
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
There you go.
All right, one of my favorite quotes. I love that. So now all of a sudden you grow up and you obviously you've made this commitment around the age of 8 that like I'm gonna make it no matter how. And I'm going to do well for myself. And was the shoe job before the selling phones, or was the phone? Which one was first?
Yeah, the shoe was first.
All right.
First, yeah.
I love this. And guys, if you're like, hey, B, why are you talking to him about like his scams that he was doing at a shoe store in Manhattan? I'm gonna tell you why. Because one of my good friends, he back in the day, maybe about 10 years ago, if you're reading Maxim magazine or Playboy magazine and you see the full page ad for the penis enlargement pills, my friend started that company.
Okay.
And he went literally from $0 to $100 million a year in 1 year. And his name is Vincent. And I said, Vincent, what's the secret to marketing? Because he's a brilliant marketer. He found basically an insecurity that men have. And he just pushed that fucking button, right? And I said, Vincent, what's the secret to making money, to like great marketing? And we're talking, and he says, he says, a good marketer has to have the ability to con someone, but the ethics not to.
Yeah.
And so now here we're about to give an example of you maybe doing some shady shit, right, making money. But guys and gals watching and listening to this, I want you to take another layer deep, go deeper and deeper, and see how brilliant some of the schemes are here, because truly, when Vincent said that to me, I'm like, oh shit, my whole life, dude, I would walk through the grocery store with my mom, and I would see a lady's purse on her shopping cart, and I would like, here's how I would steal it, and she would never know, and here's how I'd go out, and I'd be gone, and I don't even know why. It's not like I needed the purse, right? But my mind would go right into conning someone, finding the easy button for money. But anyway, so that said, the shoe store. Tell us the story of how you figured out how, because you were making like $4.95 an hour, $4.25 an hour.
Yeah, minimum wage.
Minimum wage.
Like 90. What's that? 96, 95. I can't even remember.
And you get a little commission when you sell a shoe.
Little commission.
How much was that commission?
Nothing. I mean, it was like a percentage of the shoe. Like, I don't know, maybe 8% or something.
Like that. So nothing. I mean, if we're talking back then, I don't know how much were shoes. 15, $20, $30. Maybe if they're Jordans, maybe a little more. But it was trivial, the commission.
Yeah.
And so Remi, of course, needs money.
I need money. I need a lot of money.
And I'm going to start it off, and you're going to finish it. Dude comes in a hurry saying, I need a pair of sneakers.
Exactly. So I was in the shop by myself. The manager was downstairs at the time tending to the stock, and this guy rushes in, and he's just like, hey, my shoe, I can't remember exactly what happened, but what I do remember is he's just like, I need shoes right now. And we looked at the wall, and he pointed out really quick, pick the shoes, just give me this and this size. I run downstairs, I get him the shoe, I come up, and he's like, how much? I told him, he said, here's the cash. And he gives me the cash. He says, I gotta go. He gave me, I was like, this is more than what it costs. He said, keep the change, don't worry about it. So he gives me the cash, I give him the shoes, he boogies out, and he takes off his shoes and he puts them in a box that, because he put on the brand new shoes.
In the brand new shoe box.
In the brand new shoe box.
Copy.
And so I go to the register, and I said, and I said to myself, this dude just gave me the cash. I have a box that we can put in our lost sales section or damaged or whatever section. How about I keep doing this? And I could reduce the price, keep the cash, and make money. Nobody's going. This was Athlete's Foot at the time, so this was a big sneaker chain, back in the day. Nobody's going to be miss 10, 20, 30 shoes here and there.
Yeah.
And once I figured that out, that's what I began to do. So when customers came in, I would whisper to them, of course, and I would just, if the shoes were $80, I would say, hey, if you can give me cash, because credit cards had just started. So some people were coming in and trying to charge on a credit card, and I would tell them, if you can give me, if the shoes were $80, if you give me $60 or $50 cash, just give it to me, and you could boogie out, And they would do that, and it just started building from there.
You're just pocketing all that cash.
Pocketing all that. Well, I wasn't doing it with every client because it was too suspicious. But I started to pocket the cash, and then I was in high school at the time. Everybody wants new shoes. Everybody wants fresh shoes. Everybody wants Jordans.
Oh.
So what am I doing?
So they all come see Remi.
They come see Remi. I'm the sneaker man. So now I'm making even more money, and I'm able to kind of space it out so that I'm being smart about it. And I learned that, growing up in the streets and doing some of the things that I was doing early on, I learned that you can't be as ostensible. You can't, be selling every sneaker because you're going to eventually get caught. You need to be smart about it. So I learned the system of spacing it out. And there were times when I would ask for extra hours, and then I would get extra hours, and I would work on the weekend. And part of what I did was that was my sneaker scam. That's how I made a lot of cash.
And you quit that job and you moved on to selling.
Well, from there I went into the drug game.
Okay.
So from there, like that's where I got a good amount of seed money to go buy product enough product to be able to chop it up and sell it.
Okay, so you would cut it up and then you would sell it.
Yep. And I had realized again from a lot of my business mindset came from my dad. You know, these were things that I wasn't educated on. These were just things that intuitively I kind of figured out. And, you know, growing up in the Bronx, it's like a drug deal on every corner, right? Yeah. And so I realized, you know what, I'm not trying to get in competition with anybody. So I went up to New Paltz, upstate New York, went to the campuses, and I would sell up there and make money, and you know, it was less threatening, you know, from a police standpoint, and I would do what I did, and then I would come back down.
Wait a minute. You can't just breeze over that. There's a tremendous, oh, I just sound like Trump right there. Tremendous. It's going to be tremendous.
It's going to be big.
This is going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful. China.
Yeah, huge.
Huge. Yeah. We got all the Trump buttons. Wait a minute. This is awesome because our friend Jesse Itzler calls it like have another flavor of brownie. Like, you know, make a different brownie. If all the brownies are the same, you better have a different brownie. Your brownie better be different. And effectively, it's what differentiates you. So it's easier to stand on any corner in Bronx and sell, what was it that you were selling? Or maybe you don't want to say it. Sell drugs. Sell drugs. We'll talk about that off.
I keep it generic for my
Yeah. It's easy to stand on the corner and sell drugs. They're in your neighborhood, but you're like, one, I don't want to compete with everyone. One, there might be a price issue if you compete, right? And so it creates price erosion. Like, hey, he's selling it for this. That means I got to sell it for that. Or the other thing might be territory, which means risk, right? And so you went to where?
Upstate New York.
Upstate New York.
Poughkeepsie, there was a college out there in New Paltz area.
Okay.
So I would go to New Paltz, Poughkeepsie area, and I would sell up there.
And so less risk, obviously free market.
Yep. And I had a place to stay. A good friend of mine I grew up with. We were in kindergarten together, Dominican cat. You know, him and his parents moved out the Bronx to give him a better life. So I would sleep in his basement. So I would go up there, me and my buddy, Rod, who's actually in prison right now. We would go up there, sleep in his basement, do what we needed to do for the weekend or a few days, and then head back down.
Okay. Gotcha. So you'd make your money in Poughkeepsie and come back down. Brilliant. Guys, understand how smart this is, that there's always, and we talk about this on many different episodes, where when everyone else zigs, you got to zag.
Yeah.
You got to zag. And so that's a great lesson there in marketing. And so at what point do you decide to leave the drug game and go and sell those cell phones illegally?
Yeah, I kind of still stayed in the drug game while I was doing the cell phones, but it was getting really, really hot. The risk didn't outweigh, the risk outweighed the reward, right? Yeah. And because when you go to an area over and over and over again, at some point somebody's going to recognize that pattern, and then the police are going to come. And then it's going to get too hot. And so I took this job at a company called MCI WorldCom. So I started out as a legitimate job at the same time while I'm still hustling, selling drugs, and I would go places and sell phones, and I would set up tables in front of Columbia University and other places. And this is when cell phones just first came out, so I would put the box on the table and have all the paperwork to fill out. Yeah. That wasn't working out too well for me. And then finally, one of my coworkers at the company, he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey," he showed me what he was doing. So
why do you think he did that? I mean, there's got to be a lot more reps there.
I think one, he knew that. He knew I was struggling. Two, he knew I was a young kid that was trying to make money, right? And I think I also think that he didn't think I would be one to snitch or say anything. I think he knew that I was so impressionable that he was like, you know what? I'm making all this money over here.
He's gonna throw you a bone.
Let me bring this kid under my wing. And he did, and essentially what he taught me, and I'm not advocating for this by any means, so disclaimer.
Right.
He would get people's information. Date of birth, social security card number, full name. Didn't really need an address, but he would make up addresses sometimes. And he would run the line of credit. And if their credit checked out, you could activate up to 3 phones. And so once he showed me that, I kind of took that process. And I had a buddy of mine in high school. Well, I met him a little bit later. His girlfriend worked at a hospice. So people were dying all the time. And his girlfriend would get him the information. I would pay him for each sheet of paper, and each sheet of paper had I can't remember, 10 10 people's information on it, you know, and then I would activate.
And each one of those pieces of information was one phone. Oh, 3 phones. That's
Each
right.
person's information was 3 phones.
And one phone was good for 3 months before
Yeah, because
it was shut off.
the phone would say on, you have the phone first 30 days, you don't get your first bill until after 30 days. You got 30 days and then you would get a bill, right? After you got your bill, then you had like 30 days to pay it. And then if you didn't pay it, then you had 30 days before the company turned it off, right? And so the phones would stay on for 90 days. And so what I started doing was I would go back to the drug dealers. I would go back to, you know, all the people that, you know, I knew I grew up with, high school, people in the streets, some friends, and I would just sell them. I would sell the phones, and I would sell, and you know, you didn't have to buy the phone because that was part of the plan, right? So if you activated the phone, your phone, what you were paying for the actual phone was built into the phone bill, right? Yeah. And you got to remember, at this point, cell phone bills are the plans were like $29.99 a month.
I remember that.
But if you went over, you only got like 30 minutes or like 45 minutes, something ridiculous, and then after you went over that time, I mean, it was like $1 and change a minute, right?
Yep.
And so I started selling these phones, and I was selling for about $500, depending on what type of phone it was. Sometimes $300. I would sell them. The highest ones were $900. Those were the Motorola StarTAC phones that were super. They looked like the Tic Tac. They were shaped like that, and they flipped up, and they would stay on for 90 days. And I was making tens of thousands of dollars a week, and the risk was really low because at the time there wasn't much oversight. Because you got to remember, this is 2000. You know, 2001, right? So there wasn't a lot of oversight, and cell phones were becoming popular, and I was just making tons of money. And then gradually, I was just like, I don't need to do drugs anymore.
Right, because you're making more.
Because I'm making way more money at a lower risk.
Yeah. And at what point did you get those 2 warrants? One in New Jersey, one in New York.
I got that was during that time period. So I got one in late 2000 and another one in middle of 2001.
And how old are you at this point?
At this point, I'm 19. 19.
Okay.
Yeah, when I found out I had the warrants to go join the military, I was 19.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But years before, when you were a kid, you wanted to be a Navy SEAL.
Yes and no. So I saw 2 films. There were 2 films that really inspired me. One was Bad Boys, and another one was The Rock. And The Rock was when I really found out. Yeah, that was when I first found out about the Navy SEALs. And as a kid, as a teenager at that time, because this was '96, it came out. I said to myself, if I ever turn my life around, that's what I would do. So it wasn't like this thing where every day I was like, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. It was just like, you know what? I could do that.
Right.
And if I ever turn my life around, I'm gonna do that. It was just one of those things. And then that dream, obviously, you know, that idea kind of faded away because it wasn't rooted in anything deep.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it was an idea that lay dormant.
Yeah.
But I believe still took roots, man.
Yeah.
Because then when you decided to straighten your life out.
Yeah.
You went back to that idea.
Yeah, I went back to that idea, and I think a part of the reason why I went back to, well, there was a few reasons why I went back to the idea. One was pride. As you know from the story, I was big into music, and you know, I wanted not only did I want to be a rapper, but I wanted to be a music mogul. The reason why I was doing what I was doing with the drugs and with the cell phones, because I was investing that money into my record company, right? And so at the time, the pinnacle. The highest thing that you could do coming from where I came from was be like a music mogul in the music industry, right?
Sure.
And when that dream kind of fell apart because all of the you know the story, so everything shut down. I won't give it away. People can read it in the book. But when all that stuff kind of went away, I was just like, I kind of had to go into the military. I was just like, okay, if I'm going to do anything, it's going to be the pinnacle. Sure. I'm not knocking anything else in the Navy, but it was just like, music mogul, Navy SEAL.
Yeah, and they're 2 different categories.
Yeah, 2 different categories.
Both tip of the spear.
Exactly. So part of it was pride, and another part of it was excellence. You know, my mother, from the time I was a young boy, my mother always preached to my brother and I excellence. Whatever you do it right. Whatever you do, you try to be part of the best. You know, I remember there were times when my mother would make my brother and I wash and dry the dishes, and she would come and inspect them afterwards. And if they weren't near perfect, she would put all the dishes in the sink and make us start all over again. And she would do the same thing with reports and writing. She would make my brother and I read New York Times articles and books and all kinds of literature, and then we would have to write reports on them. And if they weren't near perfect, she would make us do it all over again. So my mother was always about excellence. So when I found out that being a Navy SEAL was I was excellence personified. That that along with I wanted to be part of the best. I wanted to do something as great as what I thought at the time was great. Which I'm not knocking it, but that's great. That's what I was going to do.
Gotcha. Of course, you walk into the recruiter's office. And you're like, hey, I'm a record company mogul. You said I've got my own record company, right?
Record company,
right? You bring the pride along with you.
Yeah. Bring the pride. I was trying to swab her. Like, it was going from New York. You from New York? She's like, yeah, I'm from New York. And I'm trying to, run game on her. And she's like, all right, fool, let's see if you got what it takes. Because she was from the Bronx, so.
Okay.
So
she really took a liking to you, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. And I later found out. She died. She died 2 years.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah. So she died 2 years of a really rare autoimmune disease.
Oof.
And as a matter of fact, in the back of the book, I put a link in the back of the book for because the Johns Hopkins Institute, they created like a fund people could donate to in order to help because they still haven't found a cure for the disease that she died of. And but she was from the Bronx, and she knew that kids like me wouldn't get a chance and didn't have a chance if we stayed in the streets. And I later found out from her brother that she would drive around the Bronx and go to old friends who are on the street selling drugs and say, listen, I see where your life is going. If you don't turn your life around, you know where you're going to end up. And she would try and get them in the military. She even did that for her brother when he got a misdemeanor. She came back home and helped get him into the Air Force. And so she was like a Robin Hood in the hood.
Sure.
She took that job as a recruiter because she not only did she want to, part of her job was to get people in the military, but she wanted to get specific people. She wanted to be able to give people a second chance.
Yeah.
And it was a blessing that I ran into her.
She really was your angel, like you described.
Absolutely.
And in that way, she said, hey, you got 2 warrants. We're not taking you anywhere.
Yep.
But
yeah. When she ran my background and she told me I had those warrants, I got up and got ready to run out. Went out the office. I got ready, but she was like,
you knew you had the warrants.
I didn't know I had the warrants.
Oh, you didn't know you had the warrants.
I didn't know I had the warrants.
Got it. Okay, the whole time I'm thinking, Remi, why do you walk into a recruiter's office with warrants, man?
No, I thought I was clean.
Gotcha.
I thought I was clean.
So you were as shocked as she was, like.
Yeah. So when she said you got warrants,
yeah.
I thought it was for the stuff I was doing with the cell phone. Because people were getting locked up and going to federal prison. Right. People started getting caught out of the office that I was working out of, and that's one of the reasons why I left.
Okay.
And so I was like, this is it. I got caught. I'm going to federal prison. Like, there's no defense because of the stuff that I was doing. And so when she said that, I went to go boogie out. And then she stopped me and said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm not trying to go to jail today. I at least want to go home and get some things settled. And she told me to come back the next day, and I said, for what? She said, just come back tomorrow. Listen to me and come back tomorrow. And she asked me if I had a suit. She said, no. She said, do you have a collared shirt and some nice pants? I said, yes. She said, and I came back the next day in a collared shirt and some nice pants. And she was in her dress uniform. And she took me to both judges, the judge in New Jersey, the judge in New York, advocate on my behalf, say, hey, this kid has made some mistakes, but he has potential. He's trying to turn his life around. I know he's not perfect. Can you expunge his record?
Wow.
And, both judges unanimously expunged my record.
And by this point, 9/11 had already happened.
9/11 had already happened. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that was another reason why the judges were more keen on expunging my record, because they was like, okay, if this guy's going to do this after an act of war and he's super patriotic, and I wasn't patriotic. I wasn't patriotic at all. I mean, I was just trying to get into the military to get out of the situation I was in. And
are you patriotic now? Do you consider yourself patriotic?
Yeah, I would consider myself patriotic now because I've been to other parts of the world. And I've seen how people in other parts of the world live. And yes, we do have our faults and our issues here in America, but at the end of the day, I'd rather be in America than some of the other places I've been in. And I'd rather be in America than the country I was born in because of the way things are there. And so I would consider myself definitely patriotic now because, yes, we have a whole lot of issues that we have to work through. But I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
You wouldn't want to be anywhere else? Not even?
I've been to those places.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to those places, and coming from where you come from, I mean, in Nigeria, it's illegal to be gay. You could be killed for being gay in Nigeria. I mean, there's so many things in Nigeria that you can't just do, right? And there's other places you can't just speak out against your government. There is no freedom of speech. You know what I mean? And there is no there is no nothing, period, right? And that's why I love the fact that we can go protest, and I'm all for the protest, right? But you go protest in some of these other countries that I've been to,
You're gonna get whacked or
you're gonna get smoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna get smoked. And so that's why I would consider myself patriotic, because I've been on the other side.
You've seen the alternative.
And when you've been on the other side, that changes your perspective.
Yeah.
And that's why everything that I try to do now is I understand we have problems, but I want to be an agent of change, because I know that there is so much potential within this country where we can be that absolute great nation, not just for one group, but for all groups of people, right?
Man.
So,
Remi, what should I have asked you that I haven't asked you yet?
man, I think we kind of covered.
I think that was a perfect, I really do. Guys and gals listening to this, I'm telling you, I don't have a list of questions. I just sit here and I told Remi before the cameras went on, I said, it's two dudes sitting at a bar drinking, and I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions because I'm interested in your life. One of the reasons was there's so many parallels to my life that made me reflect. And obviously the times that we're in now, today is, John, what's today? The first. First, you know, what, a week ago now, George Floyd passed away. And so the timing was just right. You were speaking out on social media, and I wanted you to come out here. And we just went full circle from where we started to have you sit here at the end of this episode and say, look, man, I wasn't patriotic when I went into the military. I went because I wanted to get away from what was surely going to be probably a life of either death or imprisonment or just always looking over your shoulder. None of those three are interesting to me.
Not at all.
Right? And in the process of going and experiencing the world, you're like, I would rather be in the United States than any other country I've been to.
Any other place.
That's
any
powerful.
Other place.
Well, Remi, brother, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate
Thank you so much for coming out
sir.
to Chino Hills and braving the vicious COVID virus.
Yeah, I know, right?
Guys and gals, here's what we're going to do. I got 2 copies here of Transformed, one for me and my bookshelf and one for one of you guys. And I want you to do me a favor and take a screenshot, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to any of the podcast platforms. Take a screenshot, and I want you to tag me and Remi as this episode comes out here in the next few days. And about 3 days in, I'm going to take all the names, all of you who have tagged me, I'm going to pick one of you, and I'm going to send you a signed copy of Transformed, Remi's book, here in the mail. So appreciate y'all listening, watching. Remi, thank you for your time and your service, my friend.
Bedros. Yes, sir.
All right, and as always, be good to each other, and listen, give us a 5-star review, share this episode. Don't bust my balls about being political and racial and all that shit. It's all a part of, I've got a platform, I'm going to speak my voice.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't sit well with you, feel free to unsubscribe, unfollow, and block me. And I'll see you guys later.